For decades, America watched as a population crisis unfolded globally.
South Korea's president says he wants to set up a new ministry to help boost a record low birth rate.
Boosting the birth rate is not just an Italian problem, but a Europe-wide issue.
Japan, South Korea, Italy, Greece. Economists call it a demographic death spiral. In Japan, there are more adult diapers sold than baby diapers. This town lost so many people that a local artist filled it with life-size dolls, standing in for the people that used to live there. 2 workers now bear the financial burden of supporting 1 retiree, down from 6 in the 70s. America has long been left out of that conversation until now.
America is heading towards a demographic cliff.
The United States population grew last year at the lowest rate ever recorded.
So what changed? To find out, we did what we always do in Business Explains the World. We traced how American population growth went from exponential to resilient to shrinking in just a few decades. And while most countries are dealing with one cause, America's population crisis is dealing with 3, all at the same time.
And for those of you introverts who say you wouldn't mind more space, I'm gonna explain why even you wouldn't want this reality.
This is a chart of the American population, from the founding of the country until today. Looks pretty great, right? The line goes up, America gets bigger. Unfortunately, this chart is pretty useless. It tells us where we've been, but it doesn't do a whole lot to tell us where we're going. But this is a real story. Instead of asking how big America is, it's asking how fast it's growing. And the answer, over the past couple decades, has been less and less and less. The 2020s have been the slowest growth rate on record, well below what we thought it would be.
So I spent the past couple weeks looking into this because I'll be honest, like many of you, I had the same gut reaction, which is looking around a place like New York, all you're seeing are crowded subways, packed restaurants, standing in lines, and you might be wondering, this is a country that's in demographic decline?
Think of population growth like a freight train. It takes a while for it to speed up or slow down, so you don't notice it happening until it already has. By the time things start looking visibly different, we'll be in decline for decades. The first reason, and the most obvious one, is that like Japan, Korea, and Italy, Americans stopped having kids. For most of American history, this wasn't an issue. In the 1800s, having a kid was essentially a business decision. The average American woman had 6 or 7 kids. Kids were free labor. On a farm, more children meant more hands at harvest time. Child mortality was also high. Roughly 1 in 10 babies didn't make it past their first year, so families had a few extras buffer. People got married younger, had kids younger, and had a lot of them. Things began to slow a little bit in the early 1900s. But then, in 1950, the economy was booming. One income could support a house, a car, and multiple kids. Land was cheap. The federal government was basically subsidizing the middle class into existence with the GI Bill, FHA loans, and an interstate highway system that turns the suburbs into a way of life. At its peak, the US was adding around 4 million babies a year, roughly 11,000 babies born every single day. The average family had nearly 4 kids. My grandparents overshot it a little bit. Here's all 6 of them. The American dream as we know it. The white picket fence, the steady job that lasts 40 years and ends in a comfortable retirement, Social Security, the suburb itself, was built on the assumption that the next generation would be bigger than this one. But then look what happens to this chart. That spike, it turned out to be short-lived. In under 20 years, the fertility rate fell by almost 2, below replacement level for the first time in American history. Today, that number is 1.6. So what happened? As economies modernize, raising kids stops being free labor and starts being an investment. You're not putting your 9-year-old to work in a field. You're putting your 9-year-old in a Mandarin immersion program. And each kid costs more, so you have fewer of them. Economists call this the quantity-quality trade-off. It costs tens of thousands of dollars more per year to raise a kid through age 17 than it did in the 60s. I'm a financial planner, and I run the numbers on having kids with people my age all the time. And the conversation has stopped being about whether you want kids. It's about if you can even afford to have them. And a lot of the time, the honest answer is no, or not yet, or maybe 1 kid, but definitely not 3.
If you're really focused on economic success, having more than 1 child does not help.
But the thing is, American birth rates have been below replacement for 50 years, so it's not really a news story. And yet, the population has kept growing through almost all of it, which means births alone don't explain the chart. That's because for the last 60 years, America had a backstop nobody else had at the same scale. What makes America different from Japan or Korea or Italy is that its population increase doesn't depend on birth rate alone. From the very beginning, the country was founded on a different idea. And if you see over here, maybe you can just make out the Statue of Liberty, and you may know what's written on its pedestal. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Immigration is ingrained in American identity, and it's also been its population's safety net. Look at this chart. When birth rate dips, net migration went up. America continued to grow despite a low birth rate because it had the mechanism to compensate for it.
Migration is one of the great tools for getting there, which is meeting demands in the economy with actual workers who want to fill them.
Immigrants are about 17% of the U.S. workforce. They start roughly 1 in 4 new businesses. They contribute disproportionately to patents and to the founding of Fortune 500 companies. The Federal Reserve found that without immigration, the U.S. working age population would have started shrinking back in 2012. Today, around 15% of the U.S. population is foreign-born, but we've taken it for granted. Because without immigration, the country's population trajectory plummets.
If you're willing to believe that the child of an immigrant is an American, which is what our Constitution says, then the idea of shutting off immigration is shutting off, 1 out of every 5 future births.
But hey, we don't need to worry about that, right? America's been built for and by immigrants. That's never going to change, right? Right?
We will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
In January 2025, the Trump administration came in promising the largest deportation campaign in American history. And they meant it. By the end of that fiscal year, ICE had carried out over 440,000 deportations, about 70% more than the year before. The administration's stated target going forward is 1 million per year. At the same time, the administration was removing people who were already in the U.S., also making it significantly harder for new people to arrive legally. Visa appointments for international students and skilled workers were paused. Refugee admissions hit historic lows. The asylum process was effectively shut down at the border. Brookings estimates that in 2025, net migration was probably negative, meaning more people left the United States than arrived. So, collapsing birth rate plus the shut-off of legal immigration is already more than enough to put the U.S. on a path toward decline. But there's a third force. For generations, Irish people left Ireland for America. If you've ever been to Boston, you know exactly what I mean.
Emily, having fun, just having a great time, all about the positive attitude in Boston.
Over the last few years, that has flipped. In 2025, the amount of Americans moving to Ireland doubled from the year prior. Ireland's Central Statistics Office is calling it the largest American migration to Ireland since the famine, just running in the other direction this time. We had a friend talk to people in Dublin about why they left, and most of them had the same answer.
I like the climate here, the people, everything. I plan on staying here permanently.
I moved here in July 2019 from Atlanta, Georgia. I will have been here 7 years in July, and I plan on staying at least until my children are done with school.
No, I don't plan on going back to the States. It's changed a lot.
Americans are moving to Lisbon, Mexico City, Costa Rica, Madrid, Toronto, Berlin. Now, a few 100,000 people leaving per year is a small number compared to 330 million residents. But it's who is leaving that's the real problem. They're working age, college educated, in their 30s or 40s. They're the people who pay the most in taxes and consume the least in services. They're doctors, engineers, founders, researchers. When these people leave, productivity and innovation leave. And unlike a policy you can reverse or a birth rate you can nudge over a generation, when someone builds their life somewhere else, they usually don't come back. There's a name for this: brain drain.
Brain drain, where we start to lose some of our best and brightest young scientists because they think they will have a better chance in another part of the world. That would be terribly tragic.
It's what happened to Greece after 2008, to Eastern Europe after the Soviet collapse. For most of American history, brain drain was something that happened to other countries because their best people were coming to the US. That assumption is now genuinely in question. The American dream has just become too expensive, so people are going somewhere else to find it.
Groceries feel more affordable, and public transportation makes it so much easier to get around. Flights to go anywhere from Ireland seem much more reasonable than even trying to travel inside the U.S. So, yeah, I think there are trade-offs. You'd pay higher taxes here, but then everyone has health care, and that's worth a lot. So
if you don't plan on leaving, you should probably beg those friends to come home. Because if we don't reverse this trend, it gets ugly fast. The Congressional Budget Office now models the population every January. The most recent projection has U.S. population growing from 350 million today to about 364 million by 2056. That's a quarter of the average rate from 1975 to 2024. Starting in 2030, 4 years from now, annual deaths in the United States will exceed annual births. In other words, we'll have more coffins than cribs. From that point on, the only thing that grows the country is immigration. This isn't a story about 2080 or 50 years down the road. It's a story about right now. Just so you know, if you're under 40, this is the country you're going to retire into. This chart represents 3 scenarios for the US population projection. Let's play a fun game and trace the middle one and walk through how your life could actually change. In less than 5 years, deaths will exceed births in the United States for the first time. Your kid's elementary school announces it's consolidating because there aren't enough kids. Towns start feeling emptier. Local businesses lose enough foot traffic that they start closing. It's a 6-month wait to book a contractor for your kitchen renovation, and housing prices are skyrocketing because there aren't enough new homes being built. In less than 10 years, Social Security's trust fund runs out. Without congressional action, your future benefits get cut. The retirement number you've been planning your whole career around drops by nearly a quarter. In 20 years, Medicare's hospital fund will run out. Your future healthcare in retirement, the part you've been paying into since your first paycheck, is now underfunded too. Either premiums go up, coverage gets cut, or your payroll taxes climb to keep it solvent. Probably some combination of all 3. In 50 years, you're looking for assisted living, but the home health aid industry is in crisis. Waitlists for assisted living have stretched to over a year and costs have doubled. By 2100, entire suburban neighborhoods start hollowing out. Healthcare costs explode. The concept of a retirement age gets pushed to over 75 because there aren't enough young people to fund it. Universities collapse. America's infrastructure, its bridges, highways, water systems are all in permanent decline. Are you terrified yet? Well, there are 3 levers we can pull. The first is to try to increase birth rates. Hungary, Korea, and France all have tried through policies like subsidies, tax credits, free childcare, paid parental leave. Does this work? Results are mixed. Korea spent more than $200 billion on pronatalist policy over 20 years and has the lowest birth rate in the world to show for it. Hungary's been at it for a decade with marginal results. Trying to raise birth rates with subsidies is sort of like trying to fix a leaky bucket by pouring more water into it. The water isn't the problem, the hole is. And the hole is everything else. Housing costs, childcare costs, the labor market, the lack of a safety net. You can't subsidy your way out of an economy that makes parenting financially difficult.
So it's possible that if we make life better, and I realize that's a very broad statement, but if we make life better, some people might have more kids. And that would be good because life was better, not because they had more kids.
And there's a louder, more ideological version of this argument gaining traction right now. It's the idea that falling birth rates aren't just an economic problem to solve, there's civilizational emergency. And the answer is that Americans need to start having a lot more kids right now. Elon Musk has been the loudest voice on this, and he's got 14 kids himself, which I guess is one way to lead by example. JD Vance has talked about it.
I want more babies in the United States of America.
The Heritage Foundation has written whole working papers on it. The second option is to increase immigration. That's the one lever that has actually worked for the United States for 60 years. The catch is that it requires political consensus that the country no longer has. And the current administration is moving in the explicit opposite direction. So option 2 is, for the foreseeable future, off the table. The third option is to simply adapt or build an economy that doesn't require constant population growth to function. This sounds simple in theory, but in practice, it's the hardest thing on the list. It would mean rethinking Social Security, Medicare, the housing market, the tax code, healthcare, childcare, basically every system at once. Most countries facing this are doing some hybrid of all 3. None are doing it that well. The US, at the moment, is doing none of them.
A growing population isn't just good for the economy, it's good for the country as a whole. New people bring in new ideas, new ways of doing things, new innovations. They do things like keeping the tax base healthy and our social safety net solvent. They have kids, they start businesses. They help this country essentially stay alive. And yes, infinite growth on a finite planet is impossible. And yes, we need to house more people without destroying the planet. And yes, we definitely need to be paying people more so they can afford to live the lives they want to live. And what we're facing right now isn't a country that's chosen sustainable population stability. I believe it's a country that has very much been sleepwalking into demographic decline because we stopped doing the one thing that we were historically very good at, which is bringing people into our country. And I think the next decade is really going to be
answering a question that we've never had to answer, which is what happens when growth stops being the default assumption. And to be honest, I'm not really sure, but I think the answer isn't going to be a policy or a chart. I think it's going to be the result of millions of individual decisions about whether to stay or leave or build something here or go somewhere else. And a lot of those decisions are already being made, but most of them are still ahead of us.